EU leaders strike a deal on a €750 billion COVID-19 rescue plan. This after much longer than expected and tense negotiations. The French president calling the recovery fund a historic step for Europe. The UK government failed to investigate Russian interference. That's according to a long-awaited report by lawmakers. The government also criticised for delaying the report's publication. And the French Senate set to vote on a bill designed to protect victims of domestic abuse. It gives the green light to the lifting of medical confidentiality in certain circumstances. Hello, thanks for joining us here on France 24. I'm Claire Pride. Now, it took more than 90 hours of talks, but EU leaders finally struck a deal early this Tuesday on the bloc's budget and how much to spend on helping member states recover from the coronavirus pandemic. The agreement includes €750 billion in grants and loans, and all of that will be borrowed by the European Commission, a first for the EU. The main bone of contention was how much to spend on grants. The deal now needs to be approved by the European Parliament.
Dat zijn allemaal professionals. Die kunnen tegen een stootje. Je mag toch af en toe, als je dagen bij elkaar zit en het wordt soms diep in de nacht. En je denkt even verdraaid, man schiet nou eens op. Je mag toch even je vuist op tafel slaan. Dat is helemaal niet erg. Het is toch niet zo dat de ander denkt, oh, nou zijn we geen vriendjes meer. Zo gaat het toch niet. Het zijn allemaal mensen die regeringen leiden. Sommigen zijn zelfs president, een staatshoofd van een heel land. Die kunnen daar echt tegen. En echt vandaag ook weer hebben we in een wat rustiger vaarwater.
Siamo soddisfatti.
We are satisfied. We've approved an ambitious plan appropriate for what we need right now. It will allow us to confront this crisis with strength and effectiveness. It's a historic moment for Europe. It's a historic moment for Italy. The vision we've been developing for months and our determination to pursue it have been rewarded.
And now I'm joined in the studio by our European Affairs editor, Catherine Nicholson. Catherine, good to see you. Now, we keep hearing the word historic about this deal. Just how significant is it?
I mean, it is a historic moment in terms of the fact that there has never been joint EU borrowing on this scale, and particularly in order for that money to finance grants, so handouts of money to member states. And you know that Angela Merkel is not one for exaggeration and hyperbole, and even she's calling it historic. On the markets, we've also had traders expressing their confidence in terms of the bond markets, particularly, especially because of the size of the fund. It is enormous, but also this demonstration of solidarity and debt sharing. The Dutch Prime Minister, as we've just heard, he's trying to play things down a little bit. He was asked if he wanted to use the word historic, and he said, that's a term I wouldn't use. He personally staked a lot on opposing this joint borrowing for grants. He was very much isolated throughout pretty much the entire summit, really standing firm against them, and obviously was worn down at some point. And there was a non-binding but very, very symbolic vote in the Dutch Parliament in the spring, calling on the Dutch government never to accept responsibility for another state's debt, which in effect is what this is. So domestically, Mark Rutte had a lot to lose. He's saying that this is a one-off to respond to the virus crisis. Others, though, saying perhaps this is going to set the European Union down a path of doing more of this kind of thing in the future.
Now, the leaders of France and Germany, key players in all of this, but is it a good deal for them and for their countries?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. In many senses, yes, it is. I'll take you through a couple of the wins first. You'll remember Emmanuel Macron came into office, this hyper pro-European, and he won the presidential election against a real Eurosceptic, Marine Le Pen. He took to the stage on election night with Ode to Joy, the European anthem playing, EU flags everywhere, and he very quickly made a speech at the Sorbonne University setting out some real ambitions for more union in Europe in different ways. So this deal very much representing that closer union that Emmanuel Macron wants. He also talked in that speech about wanting France and Germany to really become the motor of Europe. And we've seen that during this summit, France and Germany absolutely did stick together 100%. They went to every single meeting side by side. They walked out of meetings together as well. And of course, the Germans themselves used to be frugals, so to speak, but they came together with France in the spring to actually put together the bare bones of what ended up being this deal. So we can see both Macron and Merkel looking back on the heady days of the Euro crisis when Europe was riven by these bitter disputes, and we were talking about Grexit, Italexit, all sorts of dangers to the actual union of the EU. So we know that Paris and Berlin are broadly pleased with the fact that at least they have gotten all 27 states on board with a plan that is broadly what they proposed together 2 months ago. In terms of the negatives, well, both countries wanted to get rid entirely of budget rebates, but actually the four frugals have actually got bigger rebates out of all of this. The Netherlands, Austria, 138% bigger than what they had before. There's criticism domestically in France as well about some of the details. As we know, farming is extremely important in France, and there are real issues with rural poverty here. And there's criticism about whether French farmers are going to lose out in terms of agricultural funding from the EU. The Elysée is saying no, funding is maintained, but we do need to look at the fine calculations on that in terms of inflation and how they're making that calculation, because it does look to be very much on the balance there. And there's been vocal criticism from Marine Le Pen, the runner-up in the last election, and the far-left leader Jean-Luc Mélenchon, who certainly still has a lot of supporters. In terms of green issues as well, there's criticism from leading European Greens that the budget that's intended to help fund a transition away from carbon-emitting industry, that's been quite drastically diminished. And also socialists in Germany making big headlines today over the fact that EU funding isn't going to be tied to member states respecting rule of law commitments. That was a really big deal, but that's been greatly watered down as well. So even the French president's office is admitting it is disappointed that it didn't manage to achieve everything that it went into this looking for, but they are flagging up that 27 states finding compromise, they see that as a win.
All right, thank you very much for your analysis, Catherine. Moving on now to the release of a report on Russian interference into UK politics. It's been ready for a while, more than a year, but the publication was held up by Downing Street. There's no reason for that delay, said the Intelligence and Security Committee earlier, and it criticised ministers for ignoring Russian interference in the 2016 Brexit referendum, calling Russian influence in the country the new normal.
The report reveals that no one in government knew if Russia interfered in or sought to influence the referendum because they did not want to know. The committee found it astonishing that no one in government had sought beforehand to protect the referendum from such attempts or investigated afterwards what attempts to influence it there may have been. The UK government, should have recognised the threat back in 2014 in relation to the Scottish referendum, but it didn't.
And the UK government has reacted, saying that it has seen no evidence of successful interference in the EU referendum. In other news, the French Senate is voting this Tuesday on a bill designed to protect victims of domestic abuse. Approved by the National Assembly last week, the bill authorises a doctor or another health worker to lift medical confidentiality when the life of a woman is in danger. Joining me now to talk about this is Fabienne Elkhoury from Oser le Féminisme, or Dare to be Feminist. Hello, thank you very much indeed for your time. Now, in 2019, so last year, 149 women killed by their partners. That's what the new Gender Equality Minister was saying, Elisabeth Moreno, those figures. What do you make of this bill, and do you think it'll help bring that number down?
Thank you for having me. We don't think that the bill is enough. It's a good initiative, but we don't think it's enough by itself to bring those numbers down, because we have lots of raised questions about the funding and the budget. It's been a while that we are demanding a sufficient budget, because the justice is understaffed and underfunded, the police as well, and everybody is undertrained. A lot of women go to complain about being, for example, under threat, and they don't. The complaint is not treated well. It's not well received. So it's good to put some laws in practice, but we need the money, the budget, for structurally changing, training the police and the justice, and even the medical professionals, and also having more money for shelters, because and also facilitating and improving the complaint with the police, because the police is not well trained, and there's not enough police to treat all the complaints.
Now, recently, when France was in lockdown, domestic violence is thought to have gone up quite significantly, up 30%, according to some reports. What would you say the situation is like now? Has it improved since the end of lockdown?
We don't have enough time spent time from the lockdown to have a precise idea. But again, nothing has been made structurally to help to change. We have very specific demands, especially about training, budget, and more staff, and nothing has been met. We have some laws. The new law is a good initiative, but it's not sufficient, and we don't think it will help bring the numbers down, unfortunately.
So when you talk of a lack of staff, a lack of funds, where is the resistance coming from, in your opinion? From the French government?
Yes, the French government is... They do a lot of marketing. They say, oh, we're going to do this and we're going to put some laws in place. So they are good in announcing laws, but they are not putting the budget necessary in all the different areas that is needed.
Well, in English, of course, there's an expression of putting your money where your mouth is. I suppose you're suggesting that the French government isn't doing that. And perhaps it doesn't help that recently there were a couple of very controversial ministerial appointments. So France has a new interior minister, a new justice minister, one accused of rape, the other seen as being, he's been very critical of the Me Too movement. So do you think that, in fact, the French government, the French president, Emmanuel Macron, isn't as into, so to speak, feminist causes as he claims?
Exactly, and I think the last government proved that it's not just that it's not for a feminist cause, but the last government is sexist. When you put a man accused of rape, and he doesn't deny the sexual act, he just denies the definition of rape. And when you put a serious misogynist that have an anti-Me Too statement as a Ministry of Justice, and as I said, it's been decades that we are saying that the police is not well trained and funded for dealing with, for fighting violence against women, and the justice system as well. And when you put the head of both systems as people who are clearly not feminist, this poses a lot of problem. And I think, people internationally think that the French government and Macron are feminist, but the proofs, what we are seeing, prove that they are not.
All right, we'll have to leave it there, I'm afraid. Thank you very much indeed for joining us, Fabienne Elkhoury from Osez le Féministe, or Dare to be Feminist. Let's go to Germany now, where the trial of a man accused of attacking a synagogue last October has got underway. 2 people were killed. The attack was in Halle, in the east of the country, on Yom Kippur, the holiest day of the Jewish year. The suspect faces life in prison. Shirley Sipman reports.
This Magdeburg court is set to dig into the worst anti-Semitic attack in post-war Germany. The target was a synagogue in the eastern town of Halle.
Gegenstand der Anklage, dem Angeklagten werden 13 Straftaten zur Last gelegt, darunter Mord in 2 Fällen und versuchter Mord in insgesamt 9 Fällen. Die Absicht des Angeklagten sei gewesen, möglichst viele der Gemeindemitglieder zu töten.
To kill as many people as possible, the suspect, Stefan B., attacked the synagogue on the holiest day for Jews, Yom Kippur. Dozens of people were praying inside. But although he used bullets and explosives, the killer failed to break into the building. The heavy wooden door, kept closed, saved the people holed up inside.
Also hat mehrfach mit einer Schrotflinte auf den Friedhof, auf die Tür geschossen und kam dann auch eine Frau, die da jetzt erschossen wurde. Die kam rein zufällig von der Straßenbahn.
After shooting the woman dead, the killer targeted a kebab shop, killing a man inside. All along, Stefan B. live-streamed the attack, a film that will be shown in court. Prosecutors say they got confessions from the suspect, a man so deeply radicalized he had called to kill all Jews before the attack. Halle shook Germany, showing how violent far-right extremists have become. 3 months earlier, a pro-migrant politician had been murdered. And in February of this year, another alleged far-right gunman killed 9 people at a shisha bar and cafe in Hanau, near Frankfurt.
That's it from me. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned to France 24.